I know what you're thinking. I love vampires, but I also love cowboys. Now, throw in a mad doctor and Bigfoot's cousin, and you've come to the right place. This is the Kazdoy Closet. I'm Kazdoy. This is my closet full of all the stuff that I love. And today we're going to look at 3 films with very strange concepts. And you're going to wonder, how did these things get made? But most of all, do they work? Let's find out. The first film we're going to look at is Curse of the Undead. This is from 1959. It's a Universal Studios film shot in beautiful black and white. It's a Western. It's about this town bully in this small Western town, and he's trying to take over everybody's territory and take over the town until finally somebody gets mad at him and puts a bounty on his head of $100. Who comes to collect that bounty? This mysterious cowboy, all dressed in black, who also happens to be a vampire. Meanwhile, some people in the town are dying. Nobody knows why, but there are 2 strange fang marks on their neck they can't explain. Look at the cover of this. I'm going to assume the poster was similar to this cover. And films of this type often exaggerate what really happens in the film, and this is no exception. Nothing this exciting really happens, but they do that to sell the film, of course. The people in the film are no actors of real note, but you'll notice some character actors and you'll say, hey, that guy was in this other film, and oh, that guy was in that TV show, so they're all pretty good. Probably the creepiest thing about the film is the music. They use sort of a fake theremin type sound. Now, the theremin is that strange kind of high-pitched instrument that we're using in a lot of old science fiction films, and also in the song Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys. That's the theremin. It looks pretty good. You know, it's got some good black and white cinematography in some scenes. For the most part, it's pretty ordinary looking, and it looks like typical Western stage settings from Universal Pictures, and also it looks like typical Universal backlots being used in this film. So does this film work? Well, the main problem with this film is the whole vampire lore is kind of inconsistent. For example, sometimes this vampire cowboy, Drake Robley, he's walking around in daylight, doesn't seem to bother him. Sometimes crosses bother him, but they don't always bother him. You never see his fangs. The people that he bites, they either die in a couple of days, or they wake up the next day and they're just kind of sleepy, but nobody ever turns into vampires. And I was expecting, oh cool, we'll have 3 or 4 vampires in this small little Western town rampaging the town, but it never happened. The Western plot is pretty ordinary. And interestingly, the town bully kind of backs down pretty fast. Now, usually bullies in these Western films are pretty tough and surprisingly pretty mean. But this guy starts off mean, but he backs off really fast. So the bottom line is, does this work? It's entertaining if you don't expect too much. It's an oddity. I think if you watch it with a few people, you'll have a couple of good laughs. Those would be unintentional laughs. So if you're in for all that stuff, I think you're going to like it. Our second film is called Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. It's from 1971, and this is about Dr. Jekyll, and he's creating what he calls an elixir of life, and that is so he can prolong his life and continue his experiments. And he decides that the best way to do that is by using female hormones. So at one point, of course, he decides to drink the potion himself, and he's transformed into a woman who then becomes known as Sister Hyde. Now, the writer was Brian Clemens, and Brian Clemens is best known for the TV series in the 60s called The Avengers. And he was throwing around ideas in the producer's office one day, and jokingly said, why don't we do a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but he turns into a woman instead of a man. And 2 days later, he walks into the producer's office, and there up on the wall is a poster for Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. So I guess they took him seriously. Speaking of posters, this poster is really misleading because it says shock after shock after shock. It promises all kinds of stuff like victim after victim dies horribly in a throat-cutting orgy. Unnatural laboratory experiments performed behind barred doors. Once again, he will change sexes and kill, kill, kill. And then this box down here at the bottom in yellow says, warning, the sexual transformation of a man into a woman will actually take place before your very eyes. None of that happens in this film. I mean, he does transform, but it's just, he basically, the film edits and he's a woman now. But this looks almost like an exploitation film poster. So they're really kind of over-promising the shock value of what happens in the film. This is a Hammer production. Now, Hammer Studios out of England was known for their horror series, adventure series, and mystery. And I'm a big fan of Hammer films. I have a lot of them, and I'm sure I'll be talking about Hammer more in a future episode. But they have great production values. This is the only film of the three I'm going to talk about in this episode that's in color. And because it's in color, they also get to use that bright red blood. It's not gratuitous really, and it's not overdone or gory, but it's in there. The cast, they had to have the two leads, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, be actors who were kind of similar looking, and they did that. So that helped sell the concept, and they also both have a beauty mark on the same cheek. The strange thing about this film is there's a lot of, as you can imagine, there are quite a few sexual overtones. The most obvious being that when Dr. Jekyll first turns into a woman, she stands in front of a mirror and surprisingly she disrobes and then, let's say, starts exploring her body a little bit with her hands. So that was kind of surprising, but it is 1971. You saw, nudity on the screen at that point. The other really kind of a kinky thing is there's a couple upstairs in this boarding house where Dr. Jekyll lives. It's a brother and sister. The sister is attracted to Dr. Jekyll, and they start having kind of a relationship. And her brother is attracted to Sister Hyde, and they're having more of a relationship. So you have the one guy, Dr. Jekyll, having a relationship with the brother and the sister upstairs, because sometimes he's a man, sometimes he's a woman. And then at one point, as Sister Hyde, she's making out with the brother, and then she notices that her hand is starting to grow a lot of hair on it, becoming more masculine, and so that means she's turning back into Dr. Jekyll, and she runs away from the brother, and it's just kind of a weird, creepy scene. And like I said, the production is very well done. Hammer's productions are always well done. Very atmospheric. The streets of London are filled with fog, and it's interesting little side characters, and it's just, it does work, believe it or not. It works very well, and it's very entertaining, and it's just very well done. Our third film is The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas. And this is 1957, and this is about a botanist who is in the Himalayas, and he's got a relationship with the Buddhists up there. And he learns that an expedition of Americans is coming to look for the Yeti, the Abominable Snowman. And he decides he's going to join that expedition. Let's look at the cover. This is very misleading, as you'll find out. The top of it says, "Demon prowler of mountain shadows, dreaded man-beast of Tibet, the terror of all that is human." And then down here in this box, "We dare you to see it alone. Each chilling moment, a shock test for your scare endurance." Well, as you'll see when I get further into this, it's very misleading. The cast is very good. Peter Cushing plays the botanist. He never gives a bad performance. The ugly American who's there to get the Yeti just for his own profit and to make money off of it and exploit the Yeti is played by Forrest Tucker of F Troop fame. And they were kind of cashing in on the Yeti craze. There were a lot of stories at the time about the Abominable Snowman, so they were kind of exploiting that. This is another Hammer production in black and white, and I was concerned at first that it was going to look kind of fake because they're going to have a lot of snow scenes. I thought, oh great, they're going to be on some soundstage somewhere and it's going to be totally fake looking and fake sounding. But it wasn't that bad really. I think it helped that they spent 10 days first doing some shooting in the Pyrenees Mountains, and then they switched to the soundstage, and so it came off pretty well. Now I'm watching this, and the Hammer production is always great costumes, great sets, great production values, but I'm getting a little impatient because I knew it was 90 minutes long, and it took 30 minutes for them to actually get going on the expedition. So I'm thinking, okay, we're finally going, great. Then I'm waiting for the monster, the Yeti, to show up. And all you see is this big hairy arm sticking out from behind a rock. And then later on you see this big giant clawed hand coming into their tent to grab something. So I'm thinking, well, where is the monster? And then finally when you see the Yeti, you realize that this is really not a creature to be feared. It's part of the culture of that area. He's benign, he's not harmful, and he should be respected, and he should be hunted down and killed. So you really kind of change your perspective as you see this film. That's why this cover is so misleading. So does it work? Yeah, I think it works really well, and it's really great looking, and it works well especially if you buy into that whole concept. If you're expecting a monster film where the monster shows up and throws everybody, left and right and tears them apart, then you're in for a disappointment. But if you can get behind the idea that this is a monster, quote unquote, that is really not a monster, then I think you're in for a good time. So there you have it. 3 films with weird concepts, but somehow got made, and also for the most part work pretty well. You may be able to find these streaming. Of course, you can always purchase them. Feel free to leave a comment or a suggestion. Leave a thumbs up would be great. Don't leave a thumbs down. Subscribe would be great. Click that little bell icon to get a notification when a new episode shows up. Feel free to share this with your friends and neighbors. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video. I thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.